Greetings and welcome to SportsZone Chicago. I am Jamar Harp, and this is your show, Sports101, the show that discusses the sports beyond the X's and O's. We like to look at sports in a conversation standpoint that includes the history from the past, present, and also things coming up in the making. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412. Please make sure you also get social with Sports Zone Chicago and the variety of other shows they have. On Twitter, you can follow us at Sports Zone CHI, on Facebook at Sports Zone Chicago, and Instagram at Sports Zone Chicago. Remember, Sports Zone Chicago is a sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show as well as the litany of other great shows just by logging in. Keep up with breaking sports news, and if you missed a show, listen to the podcast or watch the video via the YouTube channel as well. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, search Sports Zone Chicago, but most importantly, please download the app. The app can be found in the iTunes Store, Google Play, as well as Amazon. Now I'd like to introduce tonight's topic. Tonight we'll discuss Lewis Hamilton, an F1 legend. I'd like to start off by talking about the African diaspora. This is Lewis Hamilton right here. He is the GOAT of F1 racing. He's a black Brit, and we'll kind of talk about him and break him down in this episode. So again, I want to start off with the African diaspora. Now, the African diaspora is a worldwide collection of people who descend from Africa and were kidnapped and displaced either through the transatlantic or trans-Saharan slave kidnappings. Outside of the United States, oftentimes we get the media here that we're kind of isolated as African Americans, but that's not the case. In previous shows, I've eloquated on this as well, that blacks throughout the world are galvanizing together off the current police brutality and murders, and particularly of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Lewis Hamilton is one of these athletes that's doing that. Again, Lewis Hamilton is the greatest F1 driver ever, and he's using his platform to speak about racial and social injustice. So last week on November 15th, Lewis Hamilton, he won the Turkish Grand Prix. That was a race in Istanbul, Turkey, and that race led him to the top of the point board, which led him to have his 7th world championship. With 7 world championships, he's the most accomplished driver ever in Formula One history. He's the most winningest driver of all time. He actually edges out German Michael Schumacher, who had 91 wins and 6 world titles. So at only 35, Lewis has 96 wins and 7 world titles. So he is poised to gain more and more notoriety. After this last win, Hamilton was quoted as saying, "To all the kids out there, the dream is possible." He also said he wants to continue to campaign for diversity, human rights, and environmentalism. Lewis, he converted to, well, I don't want to say converted. He is a vegan now, so he's very environment conscious, not only in regards to food, but, you know, how we handle waste and different things. He's from South London, and, you know, there's a lot of factories and things around there. So he kind of grew up in an area, sort of like the Midwest, where they didn't really handle the pollution and different things coming from these wells. So he's a big environmentalist now. He was just named the most influential black person in the United Kingdom due to his work on black issues, and he's scheduled to be knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. So if you don't know anything about being knighted, that's the highest honor you can receive in Great Britain or the United Kingdom, to be knighted. Once you become knighted, you're eternally known as Sir. So he will be known as Sir Lewis Hamilton. As you know, Sir Elton John and other people who have got this most distinguished role from the British government. The reason he is looked at in such light is he's the only black F1 driver ever, and he's doing so much to enhance the cause. It's not like NASCAR and other sports over here. If you look at NASCAR, Everyone knelt. On F1, he's the only one doing it by himself. And he also champions these causes, right? If you look at the shirt that he wore, this is very uh, embracing to the cause. It's similar to what John Carlos and the individuals did at the Olympics with the black fist. So if you read his shirt, it says, "Arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor." Now, this is impactful because, again, he's from South London and he's in tune to what's going on in the United States. And also, he says he's a part of that struggle. That's also impactful because we'll talk about this a little later. His father is a black Brit and his mother is a white Brit, but yet he identifies as black. So again, he kind of knows where he fits in this so-called totem pole of life per se, and he is advocating for the cause on all levels. So this year, he is the only black F1 driver that's taken a solo knee ever since the injustices started happening in the United States. He also got Mercedes, his sponsor. The F1 cars are sponsored by like major companies. Oftentimes they make luxury cars. So he is a driver for Mercedes Benz. And this is his car right here. Instead of having a traditional silver that Mercedes is known for, he petitioned them to paint his car black this year to show that he's in support of Black Lives Matter and the social injustices that are going on not only in the United States but everywhere in the diaspora, but more importantly in the United States. Um, he also did a lot of other things outside of the track as well. So in June of 2020, he started a partnership with the Royal Academy of Engineering. The Royal Academy of Engineering is, think of it like a MIT or a Georgia Tech um, engineering college in the United States, but except it's in London. So it's the Royal Academy of Engineering. So he started a project called the Hamilton Commission. Now, the Hamilton Commission is a program that aims to increase participation of blacks in motorsports in the United Kingdom. So, similar to NASCAR, just like in F1, there's a variety of jobs ranging from driver to crew chief, engineers, you have garage staff, promotions, marketing, statisticians. These cars are really smart cars, so they take in data as they drive. And then you have statisticians that are in the pit crew that once the car comes in, data can be uploaded in megabytes in almost seconds. So that way they can translate that data in the computer, put it in the spreadsheets, and see the patterns in regards to how much pressure the car is losing in turns, per tire, per front tires, etc. Everything to make it faster. So there's a lot of jobs outside of driving. Um, he had his first Formula One race in 2006. And again, he's the first and only black driver in the F1 circuit. And he started in 2006. So that kind of shows you the elite level of this sport in the United Kingdom and how it's crying for diversity because 2006 is very recent. And to get your first black driver or driver of color in 2006, to me, it shows that the organization is lacking. Um, in regards to talking to people about the Hamilton Commission, he stated things that happened in his personal experience was while driving. So he started off go kart racing, and he talked about things like that. But more importantly, he also talked about increasing STEM curriculum and majors within the Black community in the United Kingdom. So if you don't know, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and it's a academic field that needs more representation of people of color, male and female. Obviously, throughout the world, they talk about STEM a lot in the United States, but in the UK, there's a lack of representation of people of color in these STEM majors as well. So that's one thing the Hamilton Commission is looking to do: increase the number of STEM majors, not only in college but on the high school level as well. So again, we talked about his experiences and why he started the Hamilton Commission. So he invoked references of being discriminated as a young child, Most people that start racing in the United Kingdom go through kart racing. They have um, a great influence in the major race car drivers. So while he was kart racing, he would get things through at him. His first F1 races, the stands, obviously, these races are in places like Monaco, the Turkish Grand Prix, what he just won in Istanbul. So a lot of these, again, are very elitist, and people come out in blackface and try to mock him. So again, he wanted this diversity to come through his commission, and this is something he's starting with his own dime to gain exposure to blacks in the United Kingdom. Um, so now let's talk about F1 racing. I know a lot of people may not be familiar with F1 racing. Um, as we're in the United States, and we always go to NASCAR. So let's talk about do a SWOT analysis and talk about some of the differences. So F1 racing is very similar to Indy racing, where it's an open wheel racing. So what I mean open wheel is you don't have any components of the car covering the wheel like a traditional car, and those open wheel cars go faster than a closed wheel car. Um, Again, it's similar to Indy, um, where it's a single seat car, and the seat is kind of built into the chassis of the whole vehicle. So you can't take the seat out. It's just part of the chassis. That's something they do for protection. These cars can reach up to 230 miles per hour, and again, oftentimes they're sponsored and developed by major luxury car companies. So some of these companies that operate F1 cars will be Ferrari, Bugatti, Mercedes Benz, McLaren, and then you have Red Bull and other people that own teams, but yet don't make their own cars. Um, Another difference between F1 and NASCAR and Indy is that the races are run on the street, and often the races are called Grand Prix. So everyone, talks about the Monaco Grand Prix because everyone knows, Monaco is the independent, a sovereign nation with the king and queen and all the glitz and glamour. But their Grand Prix is ran like downtown. So they have right and left turns. So when you look at NASCAR or Indy, all you have in left turns because they race in a circle or a large oval with embankments that go 6, 8 feet in the air versus F1 where it's street racing and they have to do things to keep their cars grounded. So they have wings and other stuff that we'll talk about later. But F1 drivers have to make right and left turns, and they race on courses as well as streets. Due to the speed their cars reach, these F1 cars are equipped with wings, front and side wings, to kind of slow the cars down. Um, this is an example of a wing right here. So while this driver is driving, he can change his wings, whether he's coming into a curve or a straightaway to get more aerodynamic, create a draft per se, or other things just to get a technical advantage. Um, Another difference we want to talk about is the time of races. If you look at a NASCAR race, most NASCAR races field about 40 cars per race, and the race is over 3 hours, and the drivers cover about 500 miles. Hence the name, 500, Daytona 500 because it's 500 miles. F1 races, they field a smaller field with about 20 cars. And again, the race can be on the street or a track, and it's right and left turns. And if the race goes over 2 hours, whoever is winning just wins. They just stop the race right there. Um, the last component I would like to talk about is the time trials. In F1, time is of the utmost urgency. So unlike NASCAR, where the cars start and it's a rolling start, and they have a pace car out there, F1 cars they start from a dead stop and they start in place. So the time trials determine what place you're on the track. Again, with the open wheel racing, most times you cannot pass anyone. So the place you start is oftentimes the place you finish. In F1 races, it might be one pass, but in NASCAR, people passing on every lap. So, that time is of the utmost urgency. So you want to get a quote unquote pole position. Um, Now let's talk about the technology in these F1 cars. These F1 cars is nothing that you've ever seen before. They're pretty much smart cars. Like you have a modern smartphone. These cars are smart cars, and they have a lot of information in them that helps determine, what's going on in the race, how the driver's using the car, and how much speed they're getting. All these teams fight for speed, and drivers are transferred from team to team because this car is not getting enough speed, the engineers aren't doing right, etc. So let's go into some of these technology aspects that make these F1 cars stand out. The first aspect I would like to talk about is a KERS system that these cars have. Now, KERS is an acronym for Kinetic Energy Recapture System. So what this system does is, if you look at the picture on the screen, it stores energy from when the car brakes and the electrical system, and then that converts it back into power. So just like if I was moving and I looked at the basic law of energy can neither be created or destroyed, and I'm going in a curve and I have to cut down on my speed, so I have to brake. Instead of losing that kinetic energy, they'll store it back and then it'll push back to the car for power. So remember, these cars are very small. So unlike NASCAR, sometimes it's only one fuel stop instead of several. And using kinetic energy can help you win races. In regards to Lewis Hamilton, he has mastered the concept of he doesn't drift, but the way he comes in and out of turns and using his braking system, he doesn't use as much gas as other people. So his pit stops can be varied and gives him an advantage in racing. The next component of technology we like to discuss is the interactive steering wheels. Now, this steering wheel in an F1 car, think of if you're like in a TIE fighter in Star Wars or something like that, there's anything you can imagine on this steering wheel. So on the steering wheel, the driver, he can control the engine, the drivetrain. He can shift gears. He can monitor computers in the car. There's a communication device, and then there's also something similar to USB ports again. So when he gets closer to pit stop, uh, the cars take information while they're going around the track or the street course. But there's certain information in the car that only uploads when you get closer to the pit. So as he gets closer to the pit, he can hit a button and send information to the statisticians and technicians, and then they can inform him that okay, and you're going in the right turns. You need to slow down. You're wearing this tire down, and after a while, you're not going to be able to brake as hard, and you'll lose control of the car. So that's very imperative to get that information. And again, all this is on the steering wheel. Next, I would like to talk about the carbon fiber construction of these cars. So obviously, there's a weight limit. I think it's about 1,600 pounds. But to ensure safety, NASCAR had the van system where you put your helmet on and you're connected to the back of the car. Where here, they wove carbon fiber throughout the cars. So even if the car is not made completely of carbon fiber, they weaved it through the other sources to kind of make it. Think of back like in ancient medieval days when knights used to wear mail. So if something hit them, they still would experience the brunt contact of it, but the mail kind of protected them. So this carbon fiber construction is similar to that. Um, Again, these F1 teams, they spend $300 million a year to develop and maintain these cars. So um, all this information and technology they're using on a daily basis just to compete with each other.
With the with the carbon fiber system, you
Mhm,
compare it to mail that knights would wear. So are
mhm.
you saying that the car kind of has this intuitive ability to kind of gauge like impact, so to speak?
No, so what happens is when they make the car, say if you had a bobsled and then we made
Okay.
out of carbon, but
Okay.
you can take higher quality like carbon fibers that NASA or military would use and
Hmm.
weave it into your car. Think if I had carbon fiber with aluminum or plastic. It would just make it stronger.
So it makes it okay. So it makes it more durable based on if there's any kind of impact. So
Yeah.
it's more like an extra layer. Okay, I was
Mhm.
like, how intuitive is that? Okay, so it just makes it more okay in
Yeah.
regards to if it has any kind of impact, it makes it stronger.
Exactly, because you got to remember with these cars, they're not only worried about the safety of the driver, but the millions of dollars they put in the computer equipment to track in the curves. Like each tire may have a computer system in it, the braking system, the curve system. Lewis Hamilton, again, he brakes so well that he uses less gas than other people. Because if you're
Hmm.
going 230 miles per hour and you hit on the brakes, you'll lose so much kinetic energy. You have to hit the gas pedal so hard again to keep up. You're just burning gas. So
Okay.
there's a lot of different things you can do with this technology, and it's valuable. So they have to put carbon around it to keep the technology and the driver safe.
Ah, okay. Good to know. Thanks.
All right, so right there, we kind of discussed the intro to Lewis Hamilton. We talked about again. That's my sensei, Maya Kai, my my spiritual guide through the podcast world, and my introduction to Sports Zone Chicago. So she has a great show, Sean and Maya in the morning. Check that out. It's one of my favorites. I listen to that at work. Um, so right now we kind of went through who Lewis Hamilton is. We talked about F1 to give you an idea of what goes on in the F1 race and things behind it. And we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue to delve into the past, what makes Lewis Hamilton who he is, and kind of how he started racing. Again, he's a trailblazer in his field, being the only black driver in London or in the UK and in F1 in general. F1, this is the European racing circuit, so we'll talk about some of the elitist concepts of that. Again, he races in all these European countries, and he's by himself. So take a short break, come back, and we'll finish talking about Lewis Hamilton and kind of figure out his motivations and what he wants to do moving forward. So we'll see you in a bit, family.
With coronavirus still spreading, people at higher risk must take extra precautions. You're at higher risk if you are over 65 or if you have any serious underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, diabetes, or if your immune system is compromised for any reason. If you're at higher risk, wash your hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. disinfect frequently touched objects, and wash up after being in public spaces. And when it comes to social situations, less is better. Stay 6 feet or 2 arm lengths away from other people. Better still, stay home if you can. If you're sick, please stay home and away from others. And if you think you've been exposed to the virus, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. In challenging times, the choices you make are critical. Please visit coronavirus.gov for more information.
See me.
See me.
See me. See my dark skin and my kinky hair.
See me. Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my tan skin and my curly hair.
See me.
Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
Thank you, and welcome back to SportsZone Chicago. I hope you guys looked at our commercials right there. Remember, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. I know a lot of people will be out celebrating with friends and family, taking the time to, catch up with loved ones. But let's not forget about our safety as well. You go out, make sure you have your sanitizer, your mask. Let's try to social distance as possible. Hopefully, people have serving containers and things like that to ensure the safety if they do have a large gathering. But let's make sure we're safe tomorrow so we can keep the impact the lowest possible on this pandemic that we're facing. Again, welcome back. My name is Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sports beyond the X's and O's. Again, we like to take the sport to the next level and look at it from a people, places, and things perspective and use a lens of history from the past, present, and future. Again, make sure you get social with my show and all the rest of the shows on Sports Zone Chicago. Follow us through social media. On Twitter, we can be found at SportsZone CHI, Facebook, and Instagram, both Sports Zone Chicago. Please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, search Sports Zone Chicago, but most importantly, please download the app. The app can be found on the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now back to our scheduled programming. Who is Lewis Hamilton? Lewis Hamilton, we've already discussed, is a black Brit, and he's the greatest F1 driver. Some say the greatest driver ever, but let's kind of delve into who he is as a person. He's 35 years old, and currently his net worth is $285 million. He's made that money, of course, being the most successful F1 driver ever, and through a lot of his corporate sponsorships, as well as his team signing rates with McLaren and Mercedes-Benz. So he was born in the housing projects in the borough of Hertfordshire. That's in South London. It's not Brixton, but it is, south of downtown London, to a black British dad and a white British mother. As I stated earlier, he identifies as black, even though his mother is white. And that's from, personal preferences. He's lived with both his mom and dad, and then the way he views himself in society. Obviously, Britain is very similar to the United States, as the United States was a colony of Great Britain. So they look at race in some of the same lenses. So even though he has a white mother, he's still considered, black. They do have different classes of, colorism, but, he's still considered black. So Lewis's parents, they separated at an early age, but his dad remained a driving force in his life. So he lived with his mom from when he was 2 to about 10 or 11. And then at 12 years old, he moved with his dad, and his dad managed his career up until like 2010. So when he was 5 years old, when he was living with his mom, his dad used to be an IT contractor. His dad bought him an RC car, And in London, they have RC racing teams. RC is a radio control car, like the cars you get your kids. So they have racing is big over there. So the kids start off on RC cars, and then the normal progression would be kart racing. These are like souped up go karts, and then the lower levels of F1. So ultimately, F1 is the highest goal. So he started RC racing and was doing very well with that. And then at 8 years old, he moved into kart racing. So if you look at this picture right here, this is his first kart race, and obviously he won the race. That's Lewis at 8 years old before his cornrows and stuff came in, and you can see, he's had a passion for racing ever since. Now, this cart that he's in, this is a starter cart. As the kids get older, obviously the carts start to resemble, F1 cars, but you can see they all kind of start from the same, model, sitting in there, tight, low to the ground, to be aerodynamic for the turns. So once Lewis found this passion for racing, his father had to quit his job as an IT contractor. Why did his father have to quit his job? Because he was not only Lewis's manager, but he had to pay for everything. So racing is a very, very elitist sport in all countries, but and particularly in London. So even on the kart scene as a child, you have to pay for the maintenance and upkeep of the cart. Gas. You have to have somewhere to store it. You have to have a trailer to take it to different races. You have to be the quasi mechanic to fix things at the race, have accessible parts, etc. So to do this, he couldn't work his job. He can't work a 9 to 5. So he took like several odd jobs to pay for the all the stuff associated with racing. Lewis, when he was young, he also excelled in soccer too. And he stated he would have tried to go to the English Premier League if not for racing. He played a little rugby too, but he liked soccer better, and he's a big time, Arsenal fan. Crystal Palace is my team. They're closer to Brixton, and Brixton is the home where a lot of the West Africans, people from the Caribbean, end up when they go to London. So I kind of like teams around that area. Um, so I'm a big Crystal Palace fan, but he's an Arsenal fan. Um, so as he moved through the racing ranks in 1995, he became the youngest driver to win the British Cadet Kart Racing Championship. So think of the British Cadet Kart Racing Championship similar to the truck racing or lower division of NASCAR. So he won that in 1995. So at the championship event, he's still a young kid. They had some F1 owners there, and the owner of Team McLaren took a picture with him. So Lewis went up to him and said, "I'll be racing for you one day." And the owner told him to call him back in 9 years when he got, older. However, due to his driving record, the owner of McLaren signed him in 1998 to a developmental driver contract. And the one great thing about his contract was it had an option for F1 driving. So he was the youngest driver ever, regardless of cover, to be signed with F1. Um, we talked about Michael Schumacher, who was again the top dog in F1. He's from Germany. And in 2001, when Lewis was still coming up the ranks of kart racing, Michael Schumacher returned and entered a race that Lewis was in. I guess for nostalgia and notoriety. And in this race, Schumacher finished third, and Hamilton finished seventh. After the race, Schumacher praised Hamilton for the way he raced. So if you break down this event, you have the six-time world champion of F1 racing a kart race against a young and upcoming teenager, and you just beat him by 3 points or three spots in the standing. So that kind of shows the ability of Lewis Hamilton, and he didn't even get onto the main stage yet. So when you get to his F1 career, he made his F1 debut in 2007 for McLaren. In his first race, he finished second place. Again, that's a great point to emphasize. If you look at the F1 racing, oftentimes the drivers need an acclimation period Again, these races are on the street and on tracks, and unlike NASCAR and Indy, you have to make right and left turns. So going so fast with these, high tech cars that are smart cars per se. Oftentimes drivers got to get the feel for the car, feel for the races. They never ran that track before. They don't know how turn six operates in regards to braking and speed, etc. But he defied all those um, intangibles and was able to finish second in his first race. So he went through his first season. He didn't win, but he did gain a lot of points in the standings. With F1, you have two racers to a team, and you have an individual winner and a team winner. So the individual winner is the person that gets the most points individually, but a team winner is a culmination of both of the two drivers. So he did great for Team McLaurin in his first year, which is kind of unheard of. Most times there'll be an experienced driver and a rookie driver, and a rookie driver they may use him in different manners. He may be used as sort of like a chase car to run people out, get people to run out of fuel. There's different techniques you can use. It can be used as a defensive car to shield the top driver, but he came in as supposedly the number two driver and actually did better than the number one driver. So in 2008, due to his first year, they begin to, kind of talk about him, and then that's when you see some of this elitist and racial stuff come into play. He was called reckless and arrogant for his upfront behavior. Again, he's always been a champion of, black causes. Um, Even before the recent deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, um, he's always been again a champion. So you got a rookie driver, and he's black. He's the only black driver in this organization, and he's talking out on racial and social injustice at these races that are in highfalutin areas. Like there's all millionaires at these races. If you go to the Dubai Grand Prix, the pomp and circumstance of that will make the Kentucky Derby look like a elementary school play. The amount of money they put into these things, so you can imagine the type of people there are witnessing it, the type of amenities that they're being given to witness a street race or to see a car whip past them at 230 miles per hour, which is very hard. So you can kind of imagine the mentality that these people are having, thinking that this is theirs, and he's coming in trying to take the sport, and he's making the sport look bad by driving aggressive. He's really trying to pass people, um, and he had developed a certain style. And that wasn't aggressive. To me, it was a very smart style. So one thing that Lewis Hamilton was known about his style was his speed for coming out of turns. Remember, we talked about the curve system and how it stores the kinetic energy drivers lose in the turns. But he's such a great driver that he can come into turns and not lose as much speed as other drivers, which helps him save gas. And he doesn't have that much kinetic energy to store because he doesn't lose as much. He's also known for a great wet weather driver. F1 again, oftentimes is well, all races are outdoors, but more of the races are on streets versus tracks. So over time, these streets get in different conditions when it's wet. Being in Europe, the rainy season over there is quite substantial. So oftentimes these tracks or street courses are wet, and a lot of drivers to combat this take their speed down so they won't crash and again mess up themselves or the smart car that they're driving. But Lewis Hamilton is known for the best wet weather driver ever. So he similar to a receiver catching the ball in snow, just like you would catch the ball in sunny weather. He drives the same way, whether it's wet or it's dry, and his competitors and fans start to talk about him, saying he's reckless. He basically is not falling into place per se. He's coming out. He's vocal. He's boisterous in his beliefs and in the way he drives. So in 2008, in his second year in F1, this was another remarkable feat. He won his first F1 World Championship. And in 2008, he did it in classic style. So it was the last race of the season and the last lap. And he took the lead, and that gave him one more point than the second place competitor. Um, in 2003, he signed a 3 year, $100 million contract with Mercedes, and this was a great contract. I kind of liken it to Samuel Eto'o. He is a Cameroon soccer player who used to play in Europe, and when he got traded and signed with someone else, he demanded before he played that a portion of the signing fee be given to him. So Hamilton sort of got a contract like that. So in 2013, he signed 3 years for $100 million guaranteed. He also got in the contract, he was granted access to his own image and likeness so he can use it and market in his own way. And he was allowed to keep every car that he won a race in and all the trophies. That's important because, again, these cars are smart cars. So if he's allowed to keep the car that won that race, he can sell these cars, make a museum. But again, he's controlling his brand and everything around it. And oftentimes people would get upset with that because here's this young black guy with cornrows saying Black Lives Matter. He's kneeling. He's starting institutes. He's trying to get black kids in STEM. He's doing everything, says black, 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 in a place where that's not accepted.
That, Jamar, is a huge negotiation piece. Just to not look at the money itself, but the value of the cars, like you said, just from being able to do a museum or sell. I'd be curious though if there's a clause in there that he can't sell them. I wonder if there's something that says how the cars can be used, because to give up so much value and technology just to allow him to sell it would be kind of interesting.
Mm.
But the likeliness piece, I think, is huge, and I wonder if he took a page from how he saw professional athletes in the U.S., how they have to negotiate around their likeliness and using, you know what I'm saying, team names and things of that nature. I'm sure no one within his peers probably never thought twice about the two things that he put on the table. Like, I need control of my likeliness, because he realizes that within himself, he's a brand unlike any of his peers. And he can market himself so much differently and make money based on who he is.
Exactly. Not only did he look at the U.S., but again, he's a big English Premier League soccer fan. So looking at Arsenal and you look at some of their players, they, these guys are making $200 million for playing soccer. And then they have their royalties and endorsements outside of that. So he not only used United States athletes, but the black athletes in England as well, because again, that their teams, if you look at their payrolls, and you think the Yankees payroll is big time, look at some of them soccer teams and you'll be surprised.
I'm curious, even within this respective country, NASCAR is more popular than IndyCar racing. And IndyCar racing is sort of kind of like Formula One in a way. Obviously, to me, it's not nearly as technologically savvy from what I'm gauging. Just curious if he'd ever have the interest. You know how Beckham decided later in his career that he would lateral over to play in the U.S. Soccer League, MLS. Didn't quite have the same type of effect. I mean, people embraced him, and I think he still had a certain level of success in his celebrity, not necessarily his play. Because Lewis Hamilton is so young, I'd be curious if he would consider doing something with IndyCar racing and getting involved in that. Just out of curiosity.
Well, I'm glad you asked that. And again, this is why I call Maya the sensei. So this year, his contract is up with Mercedes-Benz. And if you look at Bubba Wallace, and who used to race BMX motocross and then went into NASCAR, he's actually thinking about leaving F1 because it's kind of easy for him. He's won 7 championships. And Michael Schumacher was old when he won 6. So he's won 7 at the age of 35, making almost $300 million. He's looking to get into new territories. So he actually has thought about, coming into NASCAR. Why NASCAR versus Indy? Because, in the United States, obviously Indy is kind of geared toward like the Midwest. Again, when I was going to University of Iowa, To get to Iowa, you drive through Indianapolis, and you have to actually go past the Motor Speedway. So that's kind of centered in like that certain area of the country, whereas NASCAR has a bigger brand because obviously NASCAR started with the bootlegging in the South, in particular North Carolina. So he is actually thinking about coming to NASCAR when his contract runs out. All right, so moving forward, he's won five more titles since 2013, and after that, he signed a 2-year, $80 million contract 2 years ago with Mercedes Benz that guaranteed him, as long as he races for Mercedes Benz, he's guaranteed $40 million annually. Um, with all this money and things coming in, Lewis Hamilton is the 13th highest paid celebrity, and this is through Forbes magazine. With yearly earnings, the past couple of years, he's made 55 million per year, and that's for Forbes magazine. So outside of racing for Mercedes Benz, he is sponsored by Sony. He was actually on the cover of the F1 game for EA Sports. I believe I have a picture of that. If not, you can look at F1 2019. Lewis Hamilton is a cover athlete for the EA Sports game. So besides EA Sports, he's sponsored by Sony, Puma, Mercedes Benz, who also drives for Monster Energy, who has sponsors cars in F1, along with Red Bull, and they have ties to NASCAR as well. Bose and Tommy Hilfiger. He also has been known as a celebrity playboy, dating various models and paparazzi or wanksters, as they call them, in London. And he's been seen with rapper Nicki Minaj. Um, so to wrap this up, I would like to give some final thoughts. And here's a picture right here. This is Lewis Hamilton in the F1 video game. You can see he's on the cover. And again, everything he does, he wears black, black, black. He wears cornrows. If you ever met him in person or heard him talk, you could kind of see how he's ostracized by his peers and spectators because he's promoting an image that they don't really want to hear, but is needed to promote. And he understands who he is as a person. So moving forward, our final thoughts. Again, Lewis Hamilton has realized early that he had a passion for racing and that he was ostracized in a racing community due to his race. Instead of using this as a crutch, he used it as fuel and it ignited him. And it wasn't a deterrent, but it led him to be great, not only in racing, but his community activism, because what he does in the black communities in London is historic, especially with his money. He's sort of like the LeBron James, per se, of London, getting kids into school in STEM programs and just being a champion in a black community where a lot of people didn't do that in the London scene. If you know anything about politics and race in London, there hasn't been a lot of people that champion, for black rights as vehemently as Lewis Hamilton did. He's also been able to accept and embrace his heritage and become a champion for the cause, even while facing scrutiny. Remember, if we all acted as Lewis Hamilton in our various fields, whether I'm a doctor, a lawyer, a psychologist, talk show host, I flip burgers. If I was able to take his mindset and go out in my communities and teach and do outreach, then hopefully more people will get the message and we can get more inclusion and diversity in so many areas, not only in the United States, but in the world that ostracize or lock out people of color, in particular people from the African diaspora. Thank you again for tuning into this show, Sports 101. My name is Jamar Harp, our host. And again, my sensei, Maya Kai, is one of the great producers. I know everyone's heard of the super producer, Ivan Varga, but, Maya is another one of the great producers of SportsZone Chicago. So let's thank her. Please tune in to our next show. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Coach_Hart412. And please get social with SportsZone Chicago and the rest of all the great shows that they have. On Twitter, you can follow us at SportsZone CHI, on Facebook and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Last but not least, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Search Sports Zone Chicago, but most importantly, download the Sports Chicago app. This app can be found on iTunes, Google Play, and the Amazon stores. Have a great Thanksgiving weekend. Please be safe. Mask up. Keep your wipes. Keep everything sanitized so everyone can come back next week and we see next week's episode at our normal scheduled time of Sports 101. Thank you once again and have a great week.
Hey y'all, this is the grandfather, Tony Allen. Listen up, it's time to be first team all defense against the coronavirus. Here's a few tips. You gotta lay low, stay at home as much as possible, and please stay away from the crowds and gatherings. The more social distance from others, better for all. Even if you don't feel sick, stop the spread and play lockdown defense. Enjoy all that good Memphis restaurant food you want, but please make it takeout or delivery. If you feel sick, do not go to work or the store. And yes, I know you hear this a lot, but wash your hands. We're gonna get through this, but we've gotta work together like a team to make it happen. For more information on the coronavirus, go www.cdc.gov. And remember, first team all defense.
Compassion, noun. Sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. We're all born with it. It's in us. Don't believe me? When you hear a baby cry, something pulls at you. You want to ease that pain. You want to soothe that hurt. No one had to teach you that. It's called compassion, and it's in you. However, at some point you turned it off when it came
To me.
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 The cries of my soul have gone unheard, but today, you will hear me.
My heart has wailed a melody loud enough to shatter your ears and you ignored me. But this week, you will hear me.
This body has beat the drums of anguish, only to be silenced. But this month, you will hear me.
This year,
This decade,
This century,
I will be heard. And
you will be the one to hear me.
and when I am finally heard,
Show compassion.
show compassion.
show compassion.
Remember,
It's in you.
African Americans here and across the country are contracting coronavirus at higher rates than others. People of color and those with underlying health conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, and asthma are being hit hard. Please protect yourself and your family. Wash your hands often. Clean and disinfect frequently touched items. Wear a cloth face covering in public places like the grocery store where it's hard to social distance. More importantly, stay at home as much as possible. Your safety and the safety of our community depends on it.
You see me.
You hear me.
Respect me.
Respect. Due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of others.
We don't have to agree, but I deserve to be heard. I stand my ground. Respect me.
We don't have to be friends, but I deserve your civility. I stand my ground. Respect me.
You don't have to understand my culture, but I deserve to be authentically myself. I stand my ground. Respect me.
I stand in defiance of your need to make me less in order for you to feel adequate.
I stand.
I stand aware that the America that you see and love today is a result of my free labor.
I stand.
I stand knowing that the contempt you have for me was not instigated by me, but perpetuated by the fear you have of me. I stand.
I stand surviving your many attempts to emasculate me. Indeed, I thrive despite it.
I stand realizing that you take many things from me, but I will not allow you to take my respect.
I am a man.
I am a proud man.
I am a proud black man.
I am authentically, undisputedly, unapologetically a proud black man.
I am authentically, undisputedly, unapologetically a proud black man.
I am authentically, undisputably, unapologetically a proud black man.
Respect me. I have done more than enough to deserve it, and still you withhold it.
The bill is past due.
You owe me.
Respect me. Respect me.
Respect me.